Captain Stanley Griffith felt the rush of panic that comes with any unexpected life-threatening emergency. Like any good pilot, he swallowed his fear and fell back on his training, reaching for the checklist with one hand while hitting the manual deployment button for the ram air turbine with the other. The Rat was a propeller-driven generator designed to pop out of a hatch on the underside of the fuselage like an inverted jack-in-the-box, where several hundred knots of airflow would spin the prop hard enough to supply emergency electrical power to the aircraft's flight control systems. If the Rat had been functional, a status lamp would have illuminated when the little turbine generator came up to speed, but the electronic components in the emergency power device had also been wiped out. Griffith knew nothing about the pulse, and he didn't have time to wonder why the Rat wasn't doing its job. He went on resetting circuit breakers and toggling battery backup switches while he searched for any emergency procedure that might actually help. He'd been in bad situations before, and he knew that keeping his head straight was the only hope of getting through this. As he worked the checklist, his co-pilot tried to go out over the radio. "Mayday, Mayday! This is American 1547, flight level 350 over Titusville. Lost engines, lost electrical power. Flight controls out, Mayday, Mayday!" But the radio was as dead as the instrument panel. So were the alternate power buses, the emergency battery system, and everything else that depended upon electricity. The computer-assisted fly-by-wire system had only electronic backups, all of which had been cooked by the pulse. There could be no heroic Sully moment, where cool-headed aviators manually steered their stricken aircraft down to a safe landing area. Griffith and his co-pilot had no control whatsoever. Their plane could not glide, it could only fall. Back in the passenger section, the cabin lights were dark, the ventilation system had exhaled its last breath, and the whine of the engines had been replaced by the rising shouts of terrified human beings. There were no calming announcements from the flight deck when the nose of the plane pitched downward and commenced a roll to starboard. Clouds streaked past the windows at a dizzying rate as the loss of altitude accelerated and the G-forces began to mount. The handful of passengers, not shrieking their lungs out, fumbled with the screens of unresponsive cell phones, trying and failing to make final calls to loved ones.
Johnson Space Center, Houston, Texas. Irene Harper looked around as Eleanor Moseley strutted into mission control like she owned the place. As acting deputy administrator of NASA, Moseley was entitled to a certain amount of proprietary conceit, but there was such a thing as carrying it too far. Harper didn't actively dislike the deputy administrator. It was just that Moseley never stopped politicking long enough to do anything useful. Harper had little patience for people who valued upward mobility over accomplishing the mission. Everyone had their moments when the importance of a particular advancement opportunity seemed to overshadow the substance of the job itself, but such descents into self-promotion were supposed to be rare exceptions. For Eleanor Moseley, they appeared to be the default mode of operation. So, Harper wasn't overjoyed to see Ms. All-About-Me barging into mission control with 3 notebook-carrying flunkies in tow. Moseley's presence was more or less guaranteed to interfere with efforts to attack the current problem, and there was a roughly 100% chance that she would contribute nothing toward finding the solution. Nevertheless, the woman was the deputy administrator, or at least the acting one, until, and unless, her political contacts could weasel the Senate into confirming her nomination. Better not to antagonize her if that could be avoided. Harper started to utter some sort of polite greeting, but Moseley spoke first. "How are we doing with troubleshooting comms with the ISS?" The "we" in the question implied a level of involvement that existed nowhere outside of the deputy administrator's mind. Harper let the illusion pass without comment. "We're not actually troubleshooting. We're—" Moseley cut her off. "What are you waiting for?" The shift in pronouns did not escape Harper's attention. If there was progress being made, Moseley counted herself among the we who were accomplishing the work. At the barest suggestion that forward motion might be lacking, Harper and her team became you, and Moseley instantly detached herself from the group of underperformers. This was the sort of tactic that gave Irene Harper an occasional urge to reward Ms. All-About-Me with a quick haymaker to the jaw. Instead, Harper mentally counted to 3. We're not troubleshooting because the cause is not a technical malfunction. This is not a failure of hardware or software that can be repaired. We're dealing with a deliberate act by hostile— The word was not completely out of her mouth when about a third of the video displays in Mission Control turned blue and began showing the words "Signal Lost" in large block letters. Harper caught the change out of the corner of her eye and stopped speaking. What was that? What just happened?